we went through several weeks with Pastor Greg about thinking differently. A great series. And then last week, Chris brought the question, is he worthy? And just a powerful presentation he had on the worthiness of Christ and that decision to follow him. And yes, he's worthy. So today I've got a question. It's who in their closet, in their prayer time, it's pleased with the Lord, say, hey, just use me, Lord. I'm available to you. My desire is to serve you. Just use me. And, that's our hearts, and we plead that to God. And it's a great thing to plead to God because he will use us. But the other side of that is when that opportunity comes and he does that, and we say, he opens that door for us in ministry or for just to be of service to him, and we say, Lord, this isn't what I wanted. Or we say, I'm not trained in this area. I can't do that. I'm not I'm not a pastor. I can't do that right here. And so he gives us what we prayed for. He gives us that opportunity, and then we just fall short there. We just can't take that step over the edge of where it's not comfortable to us. We want to be comfortable, see, and he's calling us to a place to not be comfortable, and that's following Christ. And so this is an experience of just that in my life, because that's me. And a little bit, you guys know that Darnell and I traveled down to Baja quite a bit, and been involved in different things down there. And I just want to give you a little history of that and tie this into my reluctance to step out there. So years ago, we got a place in Baja down in south of Cabo in San Jose, and we really love it down there. We love the people. It's just we just love it. In this town, it was, I don't know, late 80s when we bought it, the town was quiet. There was nothing there. It's really quiet, especially in the summer. Great waves, that's the thing. That was the draw. They have great waves in the summer. And as we devoted later on, right then we weren't in church, but as we devoted our lives back to Christ and came back to church and stuff, and we found a church there, Calvary Chapel, and we started attending there, and we just loved it. Great people, bilingual service. The pastor's name is Eben Brown, and he's got a great story. He loves the Lord, but he came to Baja to fish, surf, and smoke pot. That was his reason to go. But the Lord got a hold of him while he was there and just turned his life inside out and upside down, as we like to say. And he's serving the Lord. He's the pastor of that church and a powerful preacher of the Word. No sugarcoating, no varnish. He reminded me when I first met him, and then I'd met him first and then listened to Greg and got teamed up with Greg, and it's like very similar. Doesn't pull any punches. This is what the Word says. This is what we do. There's no, come on, you'll make it. It's like, get going, let's go. And in fact, one day in a service, he was talking and he said, my job is not to be your friend. My job is to make sure that you are headed and go through that narrow gate. And you may think, well, that's harsh. That's love. That's the love of a pastor. He's pushing his people to be where God wants them to be, and not saying, hey, it's going to be okay, you just do it, go at your own pace, and everything's going to be fine. He was always urging people forward in Christ. And I really appreciated that in Pastor Eben. So we were there when we were down in Mexico, we were there, we were just regular people. We were able to come alongside them and support and stuff, and it was just a great experience. And so we were down there one summer, and Darnell wanted to go to this town that was, 60 miles away or something, and spend a couple days. And my thing is, are there waves there? And so there are. And so we went, and we're spending a few days there, and it was Saturday, and we thought, well, instead of driving back, we'll go to church here. See if they have a church here, and we'll go to church here. And so we asked around, and nobody knew of it. The Catholic Church was there, Jehovah's Witnesses were there, but no Christian church. And it's a small town, it's Springville size probably, and we asked around, and a lady in the store told us, well, I don't know about a church, but there's down here under the palapa, the palm thatched roof down at the end of the street there's a group of really nice people that meet on Saturday afternoons. And so Darnell got their number and called them, and they said, yeah, we're meeting, and we're meeting this afternoon. We'd love to have you guys come. So we went down there, and yes, they were right. These were very lovely, just great people. Some of them have been in that town for 20, 25 years at that point, but there was just a small group. In the summertime when it was warm, there's 6 or 7 of them, and in the wintertime when a lot more people come, there's maybe 15 or 16 of them. And so we got to spend some time with them. It was a great time of fellowship. They were listening to teachings on CD. They didn't have really a leader, but it was a great time, fellowship and prayer, and they asked us, where we were from and what was going on. We got to share with them. Ignite was going then, and we were sharing with them about Ignite and what the Lord was doing and what Ron and Greg were seeing happen out here in the physical. God's working to clean this town up, and our meetings on Tuesday night, which started as a little prayer group of 6 or 7 people, which has turned into a Tuesday night church service with 60 or 70 people from different churches. And it was just a great time. The Lord was really working, and people were coming to the Lord. It was just great, and we were sharing that with them, and they thought, oh, that's so exciting. And so you know how it is that somebody from the outside comes in your little group, and all of a sudden, oh, it's great news. There's stuff happening out there in the world. And so they were excited about that. And so we got to ask them about their little town. And there'd never been a church there, a Christian church. They'd been praying for one for years. There's a lot of different things going on there. There's a lot of New Age thinking. There's quite a few Americans that live there, and artists and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of New Age stuff going on, and a lot of local just things, practices going on there. And it was basically what they were telling us, and this is a dark place in this town. It's dark. And so we got to pray about that and pray that the Lord would bring somebody there, and that a church would be established in that place, And so we were getting ready to leave, and they said, hey, and we said, hey, we'd like to come back next week to your meeting. And they said, hey, when you come, would you bring a word from the Lord for us? Would you bring a teaching or something for us? And it's like, we'll come, but I'm not a pastor. I just don't do that. But we sure love to come and be with you guys and pray with you. We'll do that. We'll be here next week. And they're like, okay, And so we came back and met with them again. It was a great time of prayer and fellowship, and listened to us teaching on the CD, and it was time for us to go. We prayed, and it was time for us to go. And they're like, "Hey, next week when you come back, would you bring something, bring a teaching for us, bring us a word?" And the door opens. Right, I'm praying for God to use me, and the door opens, and I'm like, "No, I'm not that guy. I'm not. I love you guys, and Darnell and I love spending time with you, but no." But we'll be back next week. So the next week we come. Same thing. And in the meantime, I'm talking to Greg and telling him about it. And Greg and Connie are praying for this town and these people. And Greg goes, "You're going to do it, right? You're going to do it, right? You're going to." It's like, Greg, it's not me. It's not what I do. And he's just like, "Man, you better do it." And so this time when we're leaving, they're said, "Hey, They keep asking. They say, would you bring us a word next week? Would you bring a teaching or something next week when you come back? And so I gave them a definite answer. I said, maybe, I might. And so we went home, and Darnell had to fly home, and so she was up here, and I was going back. And so I put a little thing together, and the Lord was in it because it went together too easy. So I thought, okay, so it's Saturday afternoon. I'm going to head over there and bring this message to him, and the reluctant servant that I am. And so I'm about a half hour from home. It's about an hour and a half to get there, and I'm a half hour from home. And over the ocean, this thunderheads start building up, and over the mountains, thunderheads start building up. And in my old car, I have no windshield wipers, none. And so I see these thunderstorms coming, and so I can't go. I can't go. I don't have windshield wipers. It's going to be too dangerous. I should just turn around now and head back. And so I called back to San Jose to some friends there. Is it raining there? And left messages with people. They didn't answer. I called to Todos Santos to our friends there. Left messages. Is it raining? Let me know. Let me know. And nobody ever called me back. And so it starts raining, and I'm driving. And I thought, and my windshield wipers in this car have not worked for a long time. And so I thought, this is going to be dangerous. So I thought, well, I'll try them. And I click them on. Okay, Lord, I'm on the way. The windshield wipers work. I'm on my way. And so I went, and I'm taking, this is the other crazy thing, taking him a teaching on John the Baptist. This guy that's just so sold out for the Lord, will do anything for the Lord, devoted his life to him, gave his life to him, and here's the most reluctant guy to do anything. I won't step out anywhere, and I'm the one bringing this message about John the Baptist. So I went, and I thought, well, maybe if I get there, they won't ask me if I brought it, and then I won't have to do it. And I get there, and the first thing I asked, hey, did you bring something? I said, yes, I did. And so we sat around there, and as typical there, the 1 hour meetings are 3 hours long, and we just had a great time of looking into God's Word and fellowshipping and just enjoying our time together and praying for their town, and praying for that God would just bring somebody to that town to be a leader. And they'd had, over the years, they'd had I think they told us 4 pastors come and say, hey, yeah, I'm excited. We're going to do something here. And every one of them within a week was gone, and they never heard from them again. And there's just a lot of darkness, a lot of spiritual darkness in that place. And these guys were just getting driven out. When they come in and say, yeah, I think we can do something here. And then they'd just be gone. So these guys have been praying for 30 years, some of them, that God would do something there. But in the act of obedience, finally, and bringing that message to these friends of ours that the Lord had been asking me to do for weeks, and I'd just been so reluctant and so unwilling, and thinking that my heart was right, it really gave me a picture of where's my heart in this. As long as it's what I want to do, it's fine. But it's what He wants me to do, and it's not comfortable, it's not fine. And so it really made me look at that, and it's stuff I need to look at today, and I know it's stuff we need to all look at, because we get presented with these opportunities, and we just are either afraid, fear of man, we don't feel like we're up to it, we're not trained enough, there's 1,000 excuses why we can't do what the Lord would have us do. But in doing that, I was just so blessed. I don't know if these people were blessed with that message or not, but I was blessed. The Lord used that to strengthen me. And that's what He wanted to do the whole time. It's just part of the process of building us up in faith. When I finally trusted Him and stepped out there, there was a spiritual reward to that. And so that's just what I wanted to share with you, guys. Don't be reluctant when those doors open, and God asks you to do something. Step out there. I came across a quote by Oswald Chambers, the utmost, my utmost for his highest. Is that it? Is that the name of it? My utmost for his highest? And is it up there? Yeah. And this is the quote. Suppose God tells us to do something that's an enormous test of your common sense, totally against it. What would you do? Would you hold back? If you get in the habit of doing something physically, you will do it every time until you break the habit through sheer determination. And the same thing is true spiritually. Again and again, you will come right up to what Jesus wants, but every time you will turn back at that point of testing. Until you are determined to abandon yourself to God in total surrender, yet we tend to say, yes, but suppose I do obey God in a certain matter, and what if this happens or that happens? You just fill in the blank. The excuses are many. But we say, yes, I will obey God if what He asks doesn't go against my common sense. But don't ask me to take a step into the dark. Jesus Christ demands the same unrestrained, adventurous spirit in those who have placed their trust in Him that the natural man exhibits. If a person is ever going to do anything worthwhile, there will be times that he must risk everything by his leap into the dark. In the spiritual realm, Jesus demands that you risk everything you hold on to or believe through common sense and leap by faith into what He says. Once you obey, you will immediately find that what He says is as solidly consistent as common sense. By the test of common sense, Jesus Christ's statements may seem mad or crazy to us, but when we test them by the trial of faith, your findings will fill your spirit with an awesome fact that they are the very words of God. Trust completely in God, and when He brings you to a new opportunity, and that's a great way of looking at it, is an opportunity of adventure, offering it to you, see that you take it. We act like pagans in a crisis. Only one out of an entire crowd is daring enough to invest his faith in the character of God. This quote just hammers home to me that we need to just trust Him. We need to obey, and if we're going to pray that way, and we should be praying that way, that God use me. God, we just want to be totally surrendered, right? We want to be totally surrendered to You. And then when these things happen, this quote just hammers home that we need to trust Him, have faith in Him. It's just like, it reminds me of in Mark, I think it's 4:35, when the disciples are in the boat and they're going across the lake, and Jesus is asleep in the front of the boat on a pillow, and the storm is raging, and they're freaking out. They're just like, Lord, wake up, wake up. And He goes, peace, be still. And He says, where is your guys' faith? I'm with you. And it's the same. I feel that for me, it's the same. It's like, where's my faith? Where's my trust in Him that He's made these appointments for me and these things for me to do? And if He did that, He's going to bring me through them. And it's the same for all of us. And when we do them, there'll be a fulfillment in us. There'll be a fulfillment in our spirit, and there'll be a joy in our spirit. He's going to, and just we can be assured that He's going to meet our need in that time of stepping out, or stepping off that ledge, or stepping into the darkness, as the quote says, into that unknown as far as we know. Matthew 4:28. Jesus calls His first disciples. As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, He saw two brothers, Simon, called Peter, and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. Come, follow me, Jesus said, and I will send you out to fish for people. At once they left their nets and followed Him. Going on from there, He saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in the boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left their boat and their father and followed him. Immediately. And with Andrew and Peter, at once they left. And these guys, immediately they left. As soon as Jesus called them, they just left. They just left it what they knew. So here's Jesus walking down the beach, and we know that these brothers had probably heard of him, probably, knew of him, and probably seen him speak. And here he is walking down the beach, and these guys are just doing what they do. They're fishermen, and they're fishing. It's what they knew how to do, and it's what they were doing. They were fishermen. And Jesus walks by, and he just says, "Come, follow me." And at that moment, they just laid down everything. They just laid down everything and came out of their boats and followed him. They turned their backs on their livelihood, on their families, like the two brothers left their father there. Everything they knew and everything that was real to them, they walked away from to follow Jesus. It's crazy. Jesus chose these fishermen to follow him. He was God. He could have chosen kings. He could have chosen priests. He could have chosen generals. But he chose fishermen. And it's the same in our case. He could choose people a lot more educated than us. He could choose a lot more equipped than us. But he chooses us. He chooses us to do his will. And it's the same. 1 Corinthians 1:27-29. But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly things of the world and the despised things and the things that are not to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him. So these men are following Jesus, and somewhere between chapter 4 and chapter 28, Jesus turns these guys from fishermen to fishers of men. And after his ascension in the upper room, in Acts 2, and they're in the upper room, there's 120 of them in the upper room. There had been thousands and thousands that had followed him. There's 120 of them in the upper room. The promised Holy Spirit fell on them, and bam. Amazing. They're filled with the Spirit. They're filled with boldness to preach the Word, to speak the wonders of God. And Peter goes out from that room and preaches the first gospel message, and right there 3,000 people are converted to Christ in his first message. Christ wants all of us. He wants all of us to make that commitment to follow him. And when we do that, he doesn't just want a piece of us. He wants everything. The Christian life becomes the outflowing or the outliving of the indwelling Christ. He'll give us his righteousness to replace our unrighteousness. He'll give us his Spirit to fill our spirit. He'll give us his love, and that becomes our love. His joy becomes our joy. His mind becomes our mind. His desires become our desires. His will becomes our will. And then his power becomes our power. This is a place of commitment where God has dealt with me and is still dealing with me at times in this. Greg will tell you, whenever he asks me to do this, my first answer is always no. No. And but he's gotten around that. He just says, yeah, you're going to do it. So it's different. This place is more than wanting to be used, as we say in our prayers. I want to be used, Lord. I'm willing. And it's more than just being willing to be used. And that's it. It's just more than those things. It's actually stepping out. And you say, well, and I would say, well, God knows my heart, and that's the problem. God knows my heart. That's the problem. And so it's just stepping out of the boat and trusting Him when it shakes our securities and fights our common sense. We think we're not equipped or we're not ready to do what God is asking us to do. And we're mostly right. We're mostly right in that. So we trust Him to equip us and give us what we need to complete His tasks. Ephesians 2:10 says, "For we are all His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God has prepared beforehand that we should do, that we should walk in them, and we should walk in them." So that's the story of my reluctant service, and it really, it's better. This was 6 or 7 years ago when this took place, and still I want to balk all the time when God asks me to do something, but I'm getting better about stepping out there and having confidence not in me, in Him, that He's going to fulfill the needs that I have to do what He has wants me to accomplish. But there's more to this story. Darnell and I ended up, we were so drawn to that town. This was, like I said, this was 6 or 7 years ago when this incident, when we first went there. We were so drawn to that town that we moved to that town. And we just felt the leading of the Lord, and we ended up getting a house, and that's a whole nother story there, that it was totally God. We couldn't do it. And the terms that we put out there were, the realtor was saying, you can't buy a house like that, you can't do that, the seller will not go for that. And we were told that probably 3 or 4 times, in the process. And every time, the hurdle was just easily jumped until God had provided this house for us there. Then God did bring somebody to that town to minister to those people. He brought a young man and his family, Byron and Stevie Kovacs. They're Australians, and you guys have heard me talk about them 1,000 times probably, but they were 23 years old when they got there. They started in California, bought a van, and surfed all the way down Baja, crossed over, surfed all the way down Mexico into El Salvador and Nicaragua, and then went back to Australia. And it was like a 6-month trip. And they went home, and he said, the Lord was just waking up at night saying, you need to be in Todos Santos. And he said, and he told me later, he goes, we were in 100 towns just like that, all the way down the coast of Mexico. But God had put on his heart for this town, and of course he told his wife, and his wife said, I don't think so. And but he did what the Lord asked him to do. They sold it. He was a union electrician, great career, and they sold everything, headed to Mexico. And not knowing where they're going to live, not knowing what they were going to do, and just trusting that God would do that. And he came to town there, and they started a Bible study, and man, the kid, I just love this guy. I'm telling you guys, Pastor Chris and Pastor Greg, they got to meet him. He was at my house about 2 weeks ago. And we got together with them one day for coffee, and they got to meet him. And he's just a quality guy, loves the Lord, and is just so, I just wish I had the knowledge of the Word that he does at 20. He's 28 now. And just an amazing young man. And they had struggles there. They were challenged, and a lot of times just barely hung in there. Just doing the Lord's work. Their hand was to the plow. They didn't look back. They were doing what the Lord would have them do there. People would come and go to the Bible study, get really frustrating to them. They'd be in the park competing with the Jehovah's Witnesses for people, and it was just, and then they'd get in discussions with them. And But they just love the Lord, and I love this young guy so much. He's just like a son and a true brother in Christ to me. I can't tell you enough about this guy. I hope one day that he's here and you guys all get to meet he and Stevie. They had several children down there, always complications with the births, and it's really kind of sketchy. I mean, they just about lost Stevie. The first one, the second one, she had the baby on the way to the hospital on the side of the road. And it's not like here where the ambulance is going to be there in 5 minutes. And it was really touchy. So they had gone home last summer for a visit. And when they got home, they found out that she was pregnant. And they decided, we're going to stay for this one, stay in Australia. And there were severe complications with this baby. They were fortunate they were there. And they were being told every time they go to the doctor would say, abort the baby, abort the baby. This has got a problem, you got to abort this baby. And he said he got to dreading going to the doctor because every time there's a problem, you guys need to abort this baby. Finally, they're just praying about it and they refused. They're just like, no way, we're not going to. That's them. And that's Chia down there on the bottom, and that's the baby that the doctors were telling them to abort. And a Christian doctor came. And he said, let me do a test or two. And he tested it and he goes, I don't think it's the baby. He goes, I think it's the umbilical cord. And they said, let's get this baby term, not to term, but as far as we can go, and then we'll take the baby. The baby was 1.5 pounds when they took it. And here, I think, how much does she weigh now? 5 pounds. And a miracle baby. And it's an amazing story. And so they're in Australia now for 2 years because the doctors want to monitor the baby, which breaks my heart, and because I won't get to see him. We talk all the time, but it's just one of those guys, man, that I love that guy. And so he came to the house and he went down and he thought, I'm going to rent the house. They have a house there that he built. He built the house himself, and we all got to help him. And it was my family and others came and they helped him, and it was really a great time to build this simple little house for them. And he says, I'm going to go down and rent it until we feel that we're healthy enough to get back down there. And while he was down there, he's praying, and he called me one day and he goes, I'm putting my house up for sale. And he goes, we just feel that that's the thing to do right now. And my heart, I was crying. My heart was broken that they weren't going to be there. And that doesn't mean they're not going to come back. And he said that too. If the Lord brings them back there, He will. He will. But these guys, in their ministry there, they didn't see a ton of fruit. They didn't. But their hand was to the plow, and they didn't look back. They were doing exactly what the Lord would have them do, whether they saw the results or not. And I can't tell you enough about these guys and their devotion to the Lord and doing exactly what He would have them do by stepping into a place that they weren't comfortable or familiar with, didn't speak the language, and it's just amazing. So in the meantime, let's stand the story. I'll get done here. Just before these guys left, Byron calls me one day. He goes, there's some guys here from a Calvary Chapel, and they want to build a church. And he goes, what do you think? And I was like, well, I don't know. You met with them, and I said, how'd they seem? He says, they seem okay. And so they came, they bought property, and they started a little church there, and that's Pastor Eric and Pastor Todd. Eric's the head pastor, and Todd does children's ministry and Bible studies on Wednesday night. And then other guys that they left everything up here to go down there and serve the Lord. And I mean, you've got some other pictures there. Yeah, there's where we were meeting while they're building. It's just outside, and Byron called me a few weeks later, and I said, how's it going? He goes, well, I've been to a couple of services, and he goes, I said, well, are they preaching the gospel? And he goes, yeah, they're Calvary Chapel, they're in the Bible, they're teaching the gospel. And I said, then if it's meant to be, it's going to happen, Byron. And they had Byron, they incorporated Byron into it. He was doing the Bible studies and stuff, so he's part of the ministry there. And this is the church they're building. It's going to be a men's rehab, and a auditorium, worship auditorium for their church services. And it's quite a deal. And this has been about a year in the process. And hopefully this winter, like January or something, I think might be using it. So we're just excited and we're blessed. It's just we've got to see so much and come alongside, the church in San Jose, and then with Byron and Stevie, just be beside them during this ministry time and be supportive. And then we've come alongside these guys. We've got to meet them and spend time with them, and they're just quality guys. And in fact, if you guys remember the Creeches that came here and spoke to us, there were missionaries down there. Greg called and said, "Hey, you got to meet these guys from Mexico we have." We came, met them, and they said, "Hey, yeah, we're from the same church." They said, "Hey, there's some guys starting a church down there." And they said, "We're from that church. We prayed over those guys before they went." It's a small world. So anyway, that's kind of the story of what's been going on down there. And so these people that have been praying for 30 years for a church in that place are seeing it happen. And that's just, it's the Lord's timing, right? In everything. It's not our time. We think this church should be built today. And no, it's 30 years that people have been praying for this. And it's God's timing, His perfect plan. This church is coming together there. And that's the story of us in Baja. And it's been exciting and very meaningful. It really has. And we're just blessed to be part of what's going on there. And yes, He is worthy.